Paolo Banchero is an NBA All-Star. Why this is a long time coming and means so much to the Orlando Magic. Plus, our trade deadline tour continues, maybe concludes, but continues on today's episode of Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is February 2nd, or will be February 2nd, 2024. My name is Philip Rossman-Reich. I'm the expert and site editor over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com. Of course, follow me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, Paolo Banchero is officially an NBA All-Star. How he did it and what it means for this franchise moving forward. Plus, we'll continue our trade deadline tour, as you can see on the rundown over there, and talk about Buddy Hield and what it might cost for the Magic to get shooters. We'll also dive into a little bit, actually, with our friend Tony East of Locked On Pacers about why the Pacers decided to push their chips in now and what that means for the Magic moving forward. We're going to get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day, no matter when you listen to us, whether it's first thing in the morning, whether it's right when we upload. We truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. Remember, there's a great Locked On podcast covering every single team in the NBA. Just search for Locked On and the team you're looking for, the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started today. Obviously, Thursday was the day that we have all been waiting for. A day of confirmation. You know what? The NBA didn't tell us anything we didn't already know. Like, honestly, like we've been sitting here, we've been talking about it. I've been pitching it. Jamal Mosley's been yelling it from the mountaintops. Thursday did not tell us anything we didn't already know. And even if Paolo Banchero didn't get named a reserve for the All-Star game, in all likelihood, he would have been one of the alternates selected to be an injury replacement with Julius Randle, rightfully, and I'm very happy that he got named an All-Star reserve despite his injury, rightfully named an All-Star reserve, as well as Joel Embiid, who, as reported, came out, may need surgery to repair a torn meniscus and will likely, in either way, whether he has surgery or not, will likely miss All-Star weekend next in a couple weeks. So undoubtedly, Paolo Banchero was going to be playing in the Sunday game. But to be selected by the coaches, to be a full reserve, to not need that special dispensation from the commissioner, it feels confirming of everything that we have seen from him and seen from him these first two seasons. Look, the numbers honestly speak for themselves. You know, I don't know what numbers some people are looking at, John Hollinger, that would suggest that Paolo Banchero is not an all-star, but the numbers to me, you know, maybe not some of those advanced numbers that like very specific things. The numbers to me suggest that Paolo Banchero is an all-star. 23 points per game, 7 rebounds per game, 5 assists per game. He's shooting 45.3% from the floor and 35.8% from beyond the arc. He has a usage rate of exactly 30%. He is facing, I think I read a stat that he is one of the most double-teamed players in the entire NBA. Every time we mention some statistical category, in fact, I think in his last 25 games, he's averaging 25, 7, and 5. And the only players that have done that, the only players younger than 21 or 25 or something like that have done, or the only players younger than 21 or 21 or younger that have done that in the last like 10 years is Luka Doncic and LeBron James. Like, these are the lists we keep putting Paolo Banchero on. The things that he is doing, only the great players do. And so regardless of whether it was going to happen this time or this year, it was going to happen. He was going to be an all-star. But the fact that the Magic are now in the postseason chase, the fact that this Magic team has never been below 500 this entire season, the fact that the Magic are winning, sorry, Scotty Barnes, sorry, Trae Young, the fact that the Magic are winning made the case that much stronger. But again, all you have to do is watch the kid play. All you have to do is watch Paolo play. There's a control, there's composure, there's an understanding, and frankly, a figuring out of what he has to do as the team's star to put them in a position to win. Look, Paolo's really good. Like, really, really good. And I know I watch him and the way that he has grown over the last 2 years, because, obviously I've only watched him now for a year and a half, season and a half. And I think of how much he has grown and gotten better, even as this season has gone on. That mid-range jumper, he has found his spots. He's found ways to get to his spots. There are just certain shots that he takes now that are just automatic. And that wasn't the case last year. Last year, he was still figuring everything out. But let me tell you what this really means. Let me tell you why this is so important for Magic fans and why this is such a big moment for this franchise. If you've listened to this show for 8 years, I think this is season 8, you know that I'm a Nikola Vucevic fan. Nikola Vucevic was the last All-Star for the Orlando Magic, but when he made it, we were just happy that he made it. We didn't expect anything more. We didn't expect that second trip to the All-Star game. We knew that was a team that was at the end of its run, and Vucevic was among the oldest first-time All-Stars in NBA history. I think Kyle Lowry had him beat on that. But we knew that was a flash in the pan. And we were hoping, like we talked about this, you could go into the archives, we were hoping that someone like Aaron Gordon would take the reins. I know I spent the whole summer after the 2019 playoffs saying the 2020 season needs to be Aaron Gordon becoming a star. That's what we were obsessed with. This is different. We knew that team had a limit. What we are seeing now and what this All-Star berth confirms is that we are watching a team that doesn't have a limit. A team that is still discovering itself and making steps and progress along the way. This is not going to be the last time Paolo Banchero is an All-Star. This is the first of many. The first of 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 All-Star games. And I know Paolo don't want to say that because he's, if you watched all the material that the Orlando Magic put out afterwards, he was still kind of absorbing the moment. Like it's honestly watching him on the Orlando Magic Pod Squad, watching him do the interview with Josh Cohen. Honestly, watching all of that was it's like the first time I've seen him be like a 21-year-old in a very long time. That speaks to the maturity that this kid has. This is not going to be the last time he is here. Everybody who watches this Magic team, even the people who didn't think Paolo should have been an All-Star this year, recognize the path that he is on. Recognize the direction that he is going. And they recognize that this Magic team isn't just a flash in the pan. What this obviously represents to the Magic is a Magic player, the Magic star player, is going to be on the biggest stage he's ever been on. FIBA World Cup was a big stage, but we get our one national TV game one week from Tuesday when we play the Oklahoma City Thunder. That's a big night for Shaquille O'Neal. That night's not even necessarily about this year's team. I'm glad they're doing it. I'm glad they're retiring Shaq's jersey, but that night's not about this year's team anymore. All-Star Weekend is going to be a huge stage for him. And now this franchise, this team, this player is in another stratosphere. Like I said, whenever we run Paolo's stats through historical context, we are told that he is doing something that only Hall of Fame players are doing. Narrow that focus to just the Magic, and he's doing things that only one of the 8 previous All-Stars that the Magic were doing. And no offense to our guys, Jameer Nelson or Rashard Lewis or Nikola Vucevic, we're not talking about those guys. When we run Paolo's stats through the historical context, we are talking about Shaq, we are talking about Penny, we are talking about Dwight, we are talking about T-Mac, we are talking about the very best this franchise has to offer. And of course, that is unfair expectations to put on a 21-year-old. That's unfair. But after 10 years lost in the desert, of 10 years of rebuilding and not having any direction, to have a second-year all-star who is going to get better, leading a team in his second year back to the promised land of the playoffs, to set this team's future in motion, this is a big deal. This is a huge deal. This is something that's going to define this franchise and help push it forward. This is, quite frankly, really exciting stuff. I'm so happy for him. He has obviously earned it on the court. And obviously the Magic, with their record, helped him get there too. And he helped the Magic get there. Symbiotic relationship. But this is just the beginning. And I'm excited for him to get that first experience, to be among his peers who have welcomed him, by the way. Again, the players voted Paolo fourth among Eastern Conference frontcourt players. The coaches have now shown us with their vote, they understand how much of a problem Paolo Banchero is. This is not a place he's going to leave anytime soon. And so it's very, very exciting to see that the Magic now have a true all-star, a potentially perennial all-star. And we'll see how much his game continues to grow as the years go on. Because like I said last year, this is the worst Paolo's ever going to be. If everything goes right, Paolo is never going to be worse than he is now. And he's pretty good right now. So he's only going to get better. Of course, one of the responsibilities the Magic now have as a team with an all-star is to build the right team around him. We're going to get back on the trade deadline tour, talk a little bit about Buddy Hield and the Indiana Pacers rebuilding process. We're going to get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, it's time for a quick word for our friends over at FanDuel. The big game is almost here. We got the Pro Bowl here in Orlando this weekend, so we're getting close to the end of football season. And America's #1 sportsbook has you covered for everything you want on Super Bowl Sunday. If you're like me, the big game is all about scoring the best seat on the couch. I always reserve that. And grabbing your favorite football snacks, placing some super bets, maybe watching a few commercials. I'm sure there'll be a good FanDuel commercial there too. FanDuel has so many ways for you to end the season with a W or 2 or 3 for the big game. Not only can you bet on who will win the game between the Kansas City Chiefs and the San Francisco 49ers, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score a touchdown, how many points will be scored, and so much more. New customers join today and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. We want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. For your next listen, go check out the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel, not a podcast, 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Get the lowdown on the Pro Bowl and prep for the big game as well as all the news around the NBA, other reactions from All-Star Reserve announcements. I know our friends at Locked On Timberwolves, who the Magic play on Friday, will have a lot to say getting 2 guys into the game with Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns. I'm sure our friend Sean Woodley at Locked On Raptors is in his feelings about Scotty Barnes missing out on the game. Our friends at Locked On Knicks, I'm sure, are also thrilled to have Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle there too. There's a lot going on in the sports world. Plus, we had a trade between the Thunder and the Rockets. If you care about Steven Adams and Victor Oladipo, Locked On Podcast Network's there for you too. Check out the 24/7 streaming channel today. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube to see what's going on in the sports world. Now let's hear from Tony East of Locked On Pacers. And we are joined now by the host of Locked On Pacers, our good friend Tony East. Tony, how's it going? How are you feeling a week out from the trade deadline, or less than a week now from the trade deadline?
Indy's buzzing. Pascal Siakam's a Pacer. The All-Star weekend is here.
That's right.
Like 2 weeks. free agency just started for the WNBA, so the Indiana Fever are doing stuff. It is quite the time for pro basketball here in Indianapolis.
It is, and we're obviously, we're recording this before the official announcement's been made, but we will certainly have all our eyes on Indianapolis here in a couple weeks. You mentioned Pascal Siakam, and so I want to start here before we dive kind of into the meat of the trade deadline tour here that I'm doing for the Magic. The move to get Pascal Siakam, it was obviously a huge one. Siakam's a former All-Star, one of the more impactful players that was expected to be available on this trade market. The big question that I have, because, we'd actually like to compare and contrast kind of where teams are at on the development scale. And I would say, the Magic are kind of having the season the Pacers had last year. They're starting to break in. They're kind of figuring out their identity and figuring out how to win more consistently. Obviously, there's some injuries that kind of kept the Pacers from making the postseason last year. But why was this the time to push those chips in and go get that star player in Pascal Siakam?
I think a couple things matter here. I think the first one is the contractual alignment of the Pacers. Like, now is a very convenient time for them before some of their guys get expensive, before they're capped out. And they could have maybe signed Siakam as a free agent, but that's not a guarantee. And that still involves losing some similar players. So if you do it now, you guarantee to get him, you increase your chances of keeping him. And that's all great. They were really set up to make a big trade either this year or next season, but next summer they would have run out of time. But the biggest reason is simple. And this is what the Magic will likely run into next year to me. And it's that Tyrese Haliburton went from being, this guy's pretty good. He's an all-star. He's like a top 20, 25 player to like, oh, geez, Louise, this guy's unbelievable. Like, he could be a guy on a very, very, very good team. Now, I would say he was playing at a top 5 to 10 level for the first 2 months of the season before his injury. Some people would say 10 to 15. That's fine. Very good player, right? Obviously very good, and only 23. When you realize you have that for the next 6 years under contract, you now know that you're going to be good for a while. You would like to make that better, right? And so it made sense all of a sudden for them to say, being pretty good, is fine, but we can be great now, and we can be great for this whole time, and we can do it while still keeping all of our young guys and a lot of firsts to still trade in the future. We should do that. And Siakam's a perfect fit. They needed 4 desperately. They needed someone else who could handle the ball and score when Haliburton wasn't healthy, which when they made the trade, conveniently for what I just said, he wasn't. It made a ton of sense, and he's been a wonderful fit so far. He just got a nominee as we're speaking for Player of the Month in the East for January. So clearly already standing out within the new uniform.
Yeah, and it feels like finding that right moment to go for it. And I mean, can we really say, Indiana expended some draft capital? Bruce Brown was a big contract. Everyone kind of looked kind of side-eyed when they signed that big contract. It was very much, no, it's like a short-term deal. It's a lot of money up front, but like I know I tell my listeners this also all the time, like re-signing players is as much about filling out the salary slot and having that contract to move around as much as it is about getting that player. Obviously, you don't want to maybe do a 4-year, $25 million deal, 25 per deal with someone who's not going to start for you. That handcuffs you, but you want to have those pieces on the chessboard to move. And obviously I think Indiana set themselves up really well. They're honestly still set up to make another big move, which we'll dive into a little bit here in a moment, but kind of coming to that realization of how good Indiana is this year. How much, let's talk about Tyrese Haliburton. Obviously he's going to be starting in the hometown All-Star game. Immediately his impact was felt in Indiana, but how did the thought process change as this organization, this franchise began to realize what Haliburton is and can be with the system they've set up around him?
Yeah, it was interesting because the action of their belief in him was, here's all the money, right? Like, this is literally everything we can give you, and the easiest way for you to make as much as possible. Clearly they thought he could be this good. The thing that stands out about that belief is a lot of players that, weren't established stars necessarily, but we're like psyched to play with him because of what it means for them, right? Let's just looking at some Pacers examples of recent years. Aaron Nesmith, can't crack the rotation in Boston, comes to play with Tyrese Haliburton. Oh, wow, this guy's pretty good. Jalen Smith in Phoenix, not playing, comes to Indiana. Oh, he's pretty good. Miles Turner got better with Halliburton as his point guard. Obi Toppin is now better or looks better playing in this Indiana system. There's even more than that, but it's not just that he's fantastic, which he is. It's that everyone else by default becomes a more efficient or more useful player because of how kind of cerebral and talented he is. So it makes you more confident in your timeline when you know that you can take risks with your other players, or you know that anyone you get will be close to the best version of themselves offensively. So they knew they were going to be good, right? Already. They were 23-18 last year before he got hurt and missed that whatever it was game stretch where they immediately lost 8 in a row and lost control of their season. Like, the signs were already there. And so this year, when they just steamrolled everybody in the in-season tournament and beat Boston twice and beat Philly twice and beat Milwaukee 4 times, like the Cavs twice, the top of the East has been nothing to them. The bottom of the East has been quite the problem for the Pacers for some reason, but the top of these is no problem. You know, when you see that ceiling without a Siakam, when you see that ceiling with one guy who can elevate the rest of his teammates, you know it's there. And to like apply that to the Magic, like Franz is really great. Paolo's amazing. You know, I loved Anthony Black in the draft. I had him top 5. I'm a big Anthony Black believer. Once you know, and I think they know now, but once they know that like, yeah, these guys not only fit with each other, but can like elevate the talent around them. That's when it's time to like go for it and not just get the complementary pieces. And I think Jeff Weltman's a great exec. So I believe in their timing ability, but that was kind of the big swing timing for the Pacers.
Yeah, and I think that's, you really hit, I think, what the debate is internally for the Magic, because obviously, I've been telling everyone this, that they're not making any moves or any trades right now that are meant to save this season. Like I said, the Magic have had, I don't want to say the same season that the Pacers had as last year, but very similar. They got off to a really hot start. They're kind of the it team in the league. They hit the middle of the season. Obviously there's a Halliburton injury. The Magic faced a lot of injuries, not Franz Wagner missed about 8-9 games. And then they kind of hit this swoon and they're hovering around 500. I feel they're pretty safe to make the play-in tournament at the least. The 7-8 game feels like it's going to be the thing for them. But they're now trying to figure out, how do we get back to that high that we had early in the season, and how much of that is about patience and letting our young guys develop and continue to get better, and how much of it is, do we need to go out and externally get something? Do we need to get something for this year to ensure our spot, or accomplish our goals, or how do we add something that not only helps us this year, but helps us for the next 2 to 3 years? And we're going to get into one of those potential players here in a minute. But I know one thing that I'm really obsessed with, and one of the reasons why I love the Pacers, and I do feel simpatico here a little bit. It feels like the Magic, the Pacers, and I'll go ahead and throw the Cavs in there too, although the Cavs are a little bit older, more experienced. It feels like this is kind of the future of the East. We know Milwaukee, Boston, Philadelphia are still that top 3. What do our teams have to do to kind of break into that group? And obviously the Pacers made the Siakam move with the intention of doing that. But what is kind of the next step for these teams to break into and challenge the elite teams in the Eastern Conference?
Can they combine rosters?
That would be really helpful. Like, can we Voltron this?
Yeah, that would be perfect. It's funny thinking about the Magic and Pacers, because first of all, the Magic have been the Pacers' kryptonite this season, which is
like the
hilarious.
Slows them down.
Smoked them twice. So the Magic are funny to me in that they're similar to the Pacers in an opposite way. The Pacers are best offense, yikes on defense, and the Magic are like, you can't score on us, but we can't score either, right? So in that way, they're opposites, and that is kind of the separator to me from them and these top teams in the East, is that the Magic are elite defensively, which is going to keep them at a good record and keep them as a threatening and good team in the East. Pacers are a great offense, same thing. These teams can beat anybody because of their elite thing any night. That doesn't mean they're going to win, because they also stink at the other side of the ball. Whereas, I mean, Boston's an exception because they're one of the best teams.
Boston's just Boston.
I mean, they're top 2 in both, but, even the Bucks are, top 3 in offense, and their defense isn't great, but it's, top 20. The Sixers are top, I believe, 10 in both offense and defense. The Cavs are approaching top 10 in offense and are now like 3rd in defense, right? Like, you have to be there on both ends to be in that category team. I think the Knicks are close to top 10 in both as well. So that's where the Pacers and Magic need to go next, is adding the talent or making the slight tweaks to become really good or at one and kind of good at the other or pretty good at both or whatever it takes to be, a team that if your offense isn't there some nights, you can win the defense in Indiana. Or if your defense isn't there some nights, you can have the requisite scoring to find a way to win as the Magic, right? The Pacers win a lot of games 139 to 133. The Magic win a lot of games 102 to 97, right? But they don't have the opposite formula in their DNA. That's what I think both of these teams need to go from, ooh, here they come, to like, okay, here they are.
And honestly, and this is why I've been preaching patience with my listeners. I don't know if you feel the same way. This is honestly why I think it's really important for both of these teams to get to the playoffs and be in a 7-game series against these elite teams, because they're going to show you exactly where your weaknesses are. The things that you think are strengths may not translate to the playoffs. Like I have concerns about the Magic's defense a little bit in the playoffs just because of the way that they play and sometimes how they give up threes. Even like a player like Tyrese Halliburton, who's never been in the playoffs, you're going to see how a team defends him differently in the playoffs. And that's going to teach him, oh, this is what I need to get better at. Oh, they were targeting me on defense when I was on defense. I need to get better at that to get to this level. And so I always this is obviously an exciting time. There's a lot of rumors going around. Both of these franchises are on the uptick, and we both, I think, recognize the areas that they need to improve, and are just looking for the opportunities to do so. But it's still about learning what your team actually needs. And it's still in my opinion, at least, it's as much as we want these short-term rewards, it's still a process. And it's still again, the Denver Nuggets should have taught us all of this. It's not, you don't necessarily get a quick hit championship. A championship can be a 5, 6, 7-year journey to get. And now the Nuggets are set up for the next 3-4 years to be contenders.
Yeah, they identified the perfect fits too, which is, I feel like, we're about to talk about with one specific player. Aaron Gordon, as you know, is exactly what they needed the 4, right? KCP, exactly what they needed the 2, and they just slowly from playoff failures figured that out, right? So perfect fit. Continue. Sorry.
Let's take a quick break from our conversation to tell you a quick word from our friends over at Prize Picks. Look, daily fantasy games are really confusing. Like I know I've played a few of them, a few of the different ones out there. I don't know what's going on. I'm sports literate and I don't know what's going on. I don't know the right strategy. I don't know how to win. Why do you want to play a game that you don't know how to win? Simplicity is key, and Prize Picks gives you the best chance to win and gives you something really simple. All you have to do is put together a group of 2 to 6 players and predict whether they will score more or less than their Prize Picks projections. If you think Paolo Banchero is going to score more than 24.5 points against the Timberwolves on Friday, you just say he's going to score more. That feels like a pretty good bet, doesn't it? Maybe not. Minnesota's a pretty good defensive team, but that sounds pretty simple, right? That's all you want from a daily fantasy game. And the best part is you only have to get, if you have a group of 4, you only have to get 3 right to get your money back. It's really that simple and really that easy. Prize Picks gives you the best chances to win. They give you special leagues too if you're getting ready for the big game next week. So you can combine football and basketball players for like a combo of 10.5 3-pointers made by LeBron and 10.5 receptions by Travis Kelce. It's really that fun and that easy. Plus, Prize Picks gives you the reboot policy. If a player leaves in the first half and does not return for the second, Prize Picks will give you that pick back scot-free. They're the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. So go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match of up to $100. Again, go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match of up to $100. Yeah, so let's dive into one of the reasons that I wanted to have you here, because Indiana definitely still has one more big move in them. And if they're, the East feels, at least a month ago, it felt pretty compact 4-8. Now there's a little bit of separation, and Indiana finds themselves, in 6th spot, which is where you want to be, trying to climb back into that race for home court advantage. They still have one more big chip to play this season in Buddy Hield. And obviously when the report came out just before the season started that Hield and the Pacers didn't come to an extension and he was looking for a trade out, everyone started connecting the Magic to them because the Magic have some assets that they can move. They obviously have the shooting need. I want to start here. Where do things stand with Buddy Hield? Is that still a chip that the Pacers are looking to play here in the next week?
I don't know if Magic fans have seen this clip, so I'm going to cite something before I answer the question
go for it.
perfectly. Tyrese Halliburton, like once or twice a week, streams himself playing video games on Twitch or whatever. And someone jokingly in his chat right before the Pacers season said, "Ty, Buddy got traded. Have you seen this?" And Tyrese said, "I would know if Buddy got traded." And then he impersonated what Buddy Hield would say to him on a phone call if he got traded to the Magic specifically. And it was extremely funny that he specifically said the Orlando Magic. Can't believe they traded me to the Magic. It was so funny. So here's the thing. I think some of the reporting about Buddy Hield before the season was just slightly too aggressive, right? So they couldn't have gotten to the resolution that they did and got reported if the Pacers didn't offer Buddy Hield an extension. They would not know that they were apart on talks without doing that. And offering someone an extension means you want them on your team. You like them and value what they can provide to you long term. Now, Hield can still be extended through June 30th, but it's, no one's dumb. Like in 8 days, the Pacers lose all the power, right? They can't trade him anymore. Buddy Hield is the only guy who can sign the extension. So obviously they have to think about moving him. I'm not saying that there's no chance it happens, but I think that relationship is tighter than most people think, given what the reporting felt like before the season, that it was like, well, if he's not signing, we got to trade him. Chad Buchanan, their GM. And I'm not saying you said that, but like,
no. And like, I say this to people all the time too. Like, just because, everyone has gotten so much into this transaction brain where a guy's about to become a free agent, you have to trade him for something. And it's like, well, no, sometimes releasing the money is okay too. And sometimes there's just nothing out there worth taking back. And, the trade deadline to me is always about buyers and sellers. There's teams that are looking to add something and teams looking to sell something. The Pacers are buyers. They're not looking to just sell Hield for nothing. They got to get something in return. The Magic are dealing with that a little bit with Markelle Fultz, who's going to be a free agent as well this summer. Doesn't really seem like he fits the plans, but the Magic need a point guard really bad too. And so if you're not going to give them someone better, they're not going to trade him either. They'll eat the loss. It is what it is. And then I think everyone forgets about this part too, because we've all played 2K and we played, fantasy sports for our entire lives. These are human beings too. And, Buddy Hield, if he's really close with Tyrese Halliburton, trading him midseason, even if you understand that's a business, that can hurt the team in the short term too. Yep. And you're still trying to win this season, even though you might be thinking about the next 2 to 3 years or what's going to happen in the offseason. So yeah, I mean, I'm right with you on that. So
the other new value for I'd even say this is the case for the Magic with Fultz, and I guess Gary Harris also, right? He's expiring this year, I believe. Yeah. Is the value changes a little when you have a really good chance at some form of postseason play, because not only do you have to, you get a long-term asset. Maybe that's appealing to you, but you lose what they give you for this stretch run and in that postseason play, right? Like that matters. And so it's not just like trading them away because they're expiring. You're also trading away what they actually provide your team the rest of this season, right? And so the value has to be high enough to not care about that, or like a long-term salary that fits. That I've said a lot of stuff that says like, oh, it sounds like they'll keep him. I don't know. It still does make a lot of sense for them to, if they did trade Buddy Hield, like he's their third, fourth guard now. They have a lot of other young guards. So if they can get like a longer term contract guard in that slot, I think that would make a lot of sense for them, because they're going to think about the luxury tax next year after the Siakam trade, right? So it's certainly not like, I'm certainly not ruling it out by any stretch. And it's just hard to figure out exactly what his value is with only 3 months till he's a free agent. In theory, he fits on any team because he's a really good shooter, but there is a rental aspect to it. His defense is not very good, right? So I think he, in theory, fits everywhere offensively. But if the Pacers do think, well, we do need to think about moving him, I'm not sure what the value actually is or where it exactly would land.
Yeah, and like this has generally been my response whenever someone suggests Buddy Hield, because look, the fit for the Magic, like the defense aside, is really good. The Magic need a guy who's going to take 8 or 9 threes a game and make 3 of them. They just don't have, then make 3.5 of them a game. They don't have guys like that. Like the Magic are the worst 3-point shooting team in the league. If they can get someone, and it's not even about the percentages anymore. Like I tell people,
take the threes.
Take. It's not even just about taking the threes. It's the defense thinking you're going to take the threes and being worried that you could suddenly have a 5 3-point night and score 30 points on them without even thinking. Like honestly, like if you go down the Magic's roster, Franz Wagner's had a down 3-point shooting year, but he's shooting 40% in his last 10 games since coming back from injury. Paolo Banchero's up around 35%. He was like 33 if you take out January and February, or take out February when he was 1 for 18. He was sub 30 last year. Jalen Suggs is up at 38%. Joe Ingles is shooting a little bit south of 40%. The Magic have guys who are by the numbers shooting threes and shooting better than they did in previous seasons, but they're not shooting enough of them. And they're missing the majority of them still, that defenses are just like, whatever. Like Joe Ingles makes 2 threes in a game. That's not going to kill us in the long run because you're not going to make enough threes. So like for me, like everyone talks about Markelle Fultz and how he compresses space, which he does. But I just tell them like, it honestly doesn't matter if Markelle's in or if Cole Anthony's in. They're going to treat them like they're non-shooters because they're not a big enough threat. So getting a guy who is going to take, if you give him the minutes, will take 10 threes a game and be a threat to make 4 or 5 of them 2 out of every 3 nights, that changes your offense. And that's, that is something the Magic are missing to make their offense at least average beyond even just good.
I think you fit very well for all the reasons you just laid out. But to especially with Paolo becoming a better creator and guy with the ball, right? Like anywhere with a good passing guy who dominates the ball, Buddy Hield's going to be just nice and snug, just slide him in. There is a challenge to a Pacers Magic trade with Buddy Hield.
There's 2 of them.
Matching salaries are
that's the first one. The other one is we're very competitive. We're very competitive, and you don't want to help your direct competitor.
That's true. I didn't even think about that.
I know like people go crazy about divisions, and like whenever someone pitches me a trade from Miami, it's like Orlando's never helping Miami. Like we're like Pat Riley can call. We're not picking up. And I'm pretty sure he would do the same for Jeff Weltman. Like there's still some of those simmering rivalries, but like, we got to talk about it. There is something that makes sense, like stylistically, and we'll get to the salary bit here in a minute, but why would Orlando and Indiana help each other when they're fighting for the same thing?
Right.
It's, that was the risk of Milwaukee trading Drew Holiday to Portland, because the minute they traded Drew Holiday to Portland, I was thinking to myself, Drew Holiday would be a great fit in Boston. And if Boston doesn't make that call, they're idiots. But they never get him out of Portland. They never get him out of Milwaukee, because why would those 2 teams talk?
Exactly. Yeah, that's definitely a good part of it. And maybe if it's just like expirings and some tiny stuff, they don't care that much, but I don't know why the Pacers would necessarily.
Yeah. And like this, and this is, and like you said, this is the challenge. So Buddy Hield is making $19.3 million this season, expiring contract. The Magic just don't have a lot of salaries at that level. Jonathan Isaac is the big one at 17.4. Markelle Fultz is at 17, but I'm sure Indiana is still kind of loaded at forward with Pascal Siakam. So maybe there's some duplication there. Markelle Fultz probably doesn't fit what they do, since he is not very big offensively. And then you just get to, Gary Harris at 13 million expiring, so maybe you could do Gary Harris and Chuma Okeke, but like, does that really help Indiana? Like both long-term and short-term? Why not just try and keep Buddy Hield at that point?
Yeah, I think the only thing that makes any sense, there's 2 things that would make sense, I guess, would be if the Pacers really like Chuma Okeke, a surprise, that would surprise me. Or if it's somehow Isaac and like Obi Toppin goes somewhere else, but that's a big risk for, as you know, lots of reasons with Jonathan Isaac. So
it's a lot of, honestly, it's a big risk both ways, because, because Isaac's got the health issues, no doubt about it. But when he plays, he's really good still. Like he is still a defensive player of the year level player when he plays. It's the when he plays part that's tricky. And it makes it hard for me to leave the Magic or even entertaining offers for him, even with how favorable his contract is.
I think Gary Harris and Caleb Houston might actually be enough salary, which
it gets you close. Gary Harris is 13. Caleb Houston is 2. So that's 15.
That's
That's close.
Barely.
Jet Howard might, Jet Howard's not playing for the Magic right now.
Oh, the Patriots will take a lottery pick. Yes,
I don't think the Magic are ready to trade him.
Yeah,
but
they shouldn't be.
That or Chumo KK, who's $5.3 million this year, restricted free. You get his restricted free agent rights.
Yeah.
That gets you close. But yeah, I've been telling everyone this too. Like, part of the Magic's problem is they don't have the salaries to match for some of these bigger deals. And, I've been telling people this with Buddy Hield specifically. Okay, you want Buddy Hield. How much do you want to pay him this summer? Like, are you ready to give, what is he, 30? He's 31. In his 30s, 31.
Yep.
Are you ready to give a 31-year-old a 4-year, $112 million deal or something? Are you ready to pay him $20 to $25 million a year for the next 4 years? And I don't think he's going to take the Weltman special where everything's front loaded. The Magic have the cap room to do it. And on top of that, the Magic have the cap room to go out and sign him this summer if they want him anyway. Like, why give up something of value to get him?
Yeah, a 3-teamer might be the answer here, right? Where someone who likes Chuma or likes Caleb Houston or whatever, or really needs Gary
or has
Harris
something that Indiana wants, because that's the other problem. Orlando's so defensive minded, which Indiana needs, but they still need some guys that are going to score, and I don't think Orlando is in the position to give up anyone that can score right now.
Exactly. So maybe like someone who's trying to dump long-term money, like Atlanta or someone else could be the natural third team, but I'm not in the business of constructing giant 3-team trades.
Whenever someone pitches me a 3-team trade, I usually just reject it hot out of hand and say, you add a third team, the more teams you add to a deal, the less likely they become, because trades are already hard to do. And look, like this exercise is not meant to be a negotiation or an evaluation of a trade. I'm big on
Philip's holding me hostage, everyone.
Yes. Blink twice to let us know you're okay. I tend to say, like, let's find a framework for a deal. Let's find like the basics of a deal. We can, we'll let the executives fill in the details. There is maybe a framework here, but not a particularly strong one, I would say. Like of the trade deadline tour that I've done, Washington with Tyus Jones probably had the strongest framework to make something happen. It doesn't feel like there's much motivation for either team to make this happen, because at the end of the day, whatever the Magic are offering, unless they're putting someone unexpected in there. And the other part of this, maybe we should mention this, Cole Anthony actually goes out as a bigger salary than he comes in because of his extension. But so maybe that's someone you could throw into the mix too. But it doesn't seem to make sense for either team to give things up. And at the end of the day, the Magic are the ones getting the best asset. And look, I think Orlando is open to trading their first round pick. They've got this really heavily protected 2025 Denver pick if they need some sweeteners. But I don't think there's a lot of motivation for Indiana and Orlando to help each other out. There's nothing that just makes such perfect sense for each team to pull something out.
I agree. I think we've nailed this one. Even if there are players that make sense on both teams separately, there's not a deal that is there. I don't think.
Yeah. That's the way it goes sometimes. That's how these things go. But I will continue to say this. I think this is the case for both of these teams. Like, this year might be a little bit more important for Indiana than it is Orlando, but I still get the sense that, I get the sense that both teams are thinking of a 2 to 4 year window more than a 1 year window. They're not like, all their eggs aren't in this basket. And so I think it's really important to remember with all of these things that we're talking about the deadline, things do carry over to the offseason, and there's still a chance to do a lot more heavy lifting in the offseason when teams maybe aren't held prisoner by the teams they have now and the situations they're in standings wise. Like, you catch a team after disappointing playoff series when they're like, we've gone as far as we can go. You're not going to catch that team in February making that unless it's Chicago, which is what Chicago.
Any chance to clown the Bulls, I'm in.
Any chance to clown the Bulls. Well, we are our whole roster, the whole Orlando Magic roster exists to clown the Bulls at this point.
Think about that. That's very true.
Tony, I want to thank you for jumping on here and chatting a little bit about Buddy Hield and where the Pacers stand. It's obviously we will be chatting. We might be chatting in April. Hopefully after game 84 instead of game 83. But we might be chatting in April. But tell all my listeners where they can find you if they want to keep track of the Pacers. One of my favorite teams to watch and one of the up and coming teams here in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, Locked On Pacers for the daily info like you can get from Philip about the Magic. And they're not like lighting it up for 140 every night anymore. They've tweaked their team a little bit and it's made them better, but still an extremely fun offensive team. And Tyrese Halliburton's back healthy, so lots of good stuff over in Pacerland.
Yep, and of course, we will all have our eyes on Indianapolis here in a couple of weeks. I love Gainbridge Fieldhouse, one of my favorite stadiums in the league. I love the Circle City as well. Tony, thanks for jumping on, and as always, we will see you in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Can't wait.
I want to thank Tony for coming on the show, telling us a little bit, helping us go through some of the iterations with a potential Buddy Hield trade, give us an insight on where the Indiana Pacers are at in their building and their rebuilding ideas, as well as why they made the decision to go all in, I wouldn't say all in, but to push some chips in for Pascal Siakam. Certainly the Magic are very, very close to that point too. I think we can all feel it. So we'll see if the Magic follow a similar path here in the next year or so. But that's going to do it for me today. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. You, of course, find me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all of them makes on podcasts to your podcast-enabled listening device. You can also check us out on YouTube if you want to see this podcast over at youtube.com/@LockedOnMagic. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can follow us on Twitter at OMagicDaily. And of course, be sure to check out my Patreon page, the Orlando Magic Hub, at patreon.com/OrlandoMagicHub. Of course, thank you all for your support. Now that you're listening to us, be sure to check out the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel for all the latest from local experts around the Locked On Network, as well as our national shows covering all the big stories in sports. Stay on top of the sports world with Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. That's going to do it for us today, though. We will see you back here again tomorrow as the Orlando Magic take on the Minnesota Timberwolves. We'll have a complete recap of that game. Hopefully, I'll see some of you at the watch party downtown at Elixir. But the traffic's going to be really crazy downtown Orlando leading into the marathon on Saturday. So be warned for that. But hopefully, I'll see some of you there as we take on the Minnesota Timberwolves. We'll recap that game when we're all done there. But that's going to do it for me tonight. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic for Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic. This has been Philip Rossman-Reich. We'll see you all again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.